Hello everybody and welcome to episode 6 of the Business Fitness Podcast. Today we are joined by none other than Bobby Kerr,
the one and only,
the former CEO of Insomnia, Dragon from Dragon's Den, catering entrepreneur. He's also the presenter on Down to Business, Newstalk, and he's a cancer survivor and he's a fitness fanatic. So we cover all of that. We talk about how Bobby started his business, the gritty times and the success that followed, the life lessons along the way. So please, I hope you enjoy. Like this, please share, subscribe, please comment below, let us know if you enjoyed it, if you have any questions, any feedback for us. We really appreciate you getting the word out there, helping us grow our audience.
It's been a fantastic episode. I have to say I really enjoyed it, probably one of my favorites.
Definitely.
If you tune into Spotify, if you tune into YouTube, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, it'll be all there. Just search for the Business Fitness Podcast episode 6 and you'll find them there. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, and thanks very much, guys.
And episode 7 after this one's going to be about the wellness and mental health of a business owner. Just myself and Paddy doing that one. It's going to be a shorter episode, a little bit different. Hope you enjoy.
Honest and raw.
Stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Today we have Bobby Kerr with us on episode 7 of the Business Fitness Podcast. Bobby, you're a catering entrepreneur, former CEO of Insomnia, Dragon. You are also the Newstalk Down to Business broadcaster, cancer survivor, and a jogger.
A fitness fanatic, shall we say.
Yeah. So we're going to cover all of that.
That's grand.
Today. And first of all, we'd like to say big thanks for coming in. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bobby. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's great.
I'm delighted to be here. And again, just a credit of what yourself and Paddy are doing here, Steve. I think, to be out there talking to business is a really good thing. And, to build up listenership, which takes time, to be real, to be credible, to be honest, all those things are good. And I think if you keep that mantra through this Business Fitness Podcast, I think it's a great idea.
Thanks very much, Bobby.
Brilliant. Thanks, Bobby.
We appreciate it because
we really do.
I suppose it's easy to step back from it, and we've had feedback after the first 2 episodes that it wasn't professional enough, it wasn't serious enough, it wasn't covering heavy enough topics, and it's not supposed to. There's enough of that going on. It's supposed to be a bit more down to earth, a bit more gritty, a bit more
real. These
are the problems you get as a really small business owner, when you're starting out. And because you started out really small, and that's why we thought you'd be a great guest. You've walked the walk, you've taken it from zero up to a massive company with Insomnia. So let's cover a little bit of that, how that happened, and the challenges along the way, and hopefully we can inspire others and they get some lessons from that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, so we've a couple of questions done out, probably way too many, and we're just going to handpick a few of them as we go. I have a cake here, Bobby.
Oh yes,
that cake. My mammy made this for you to say thanks for coming on the podcast and supporting us.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
A country mammy. She's an absolute legend, Marion. Yeah.
Well, isn't that very kind?
A real Irish mammy. So this is sugar crafted just for you. It's a cup of coffee. I have to be careful.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Very careful.
What a beautiful cake.
There you go. Handmade for you, Bobby, by Marion, my mammy, to say thanks.
Well, will you tell Marion from me, and I'll tell her myself, you can give me your details later, but what a beautiful present.
Yeah.
That looks absolutely smashing.
It's unreal, isn't it?
Smashing.
She's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Real Irish mammy.
And thank you, Marion.
Yeah.
You'll be hearing from me.
My mum actually, she helped us get the business off the ground. I think I might have covered it in an earlier episode, but she made a lot of sales calls for us in year 1 and 2. She had the yellow pages and her landline and time on her hands, and she used to ring businesses all the time and just say, would you like to buy ink and toner? Because that's all we did. She'd get their codes, get the details of the printer, and she used to post them up to the office to me and Paddy, and we'd do quotes off the back of that. And some of those customers we still have today.
She also walked the streets of Port Arlington and Port Leash and canvassed and knocked on doors and tried to sell,
handed in flyers.
Just to help us at the start.
I was terrified of face-to-face selling, and I remember actually one day we were out in Hout and I was driving the car. My mum was in the passenger seat with the flyers going into businesses because she has she has guts and she's experienced. You know, she's had lots of little businesses herself.
Isn't that great?
She was just like, we're going to make this happen. So yeah, great woman. So cake from a great woman for you.
Well, thank you, Marion.
Enjoy.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit about you, Bobby, right? What did you want to be growing up once you discovered you were no good at hurling?
Yeah, I wasn't much good at hurling. I did try.
No, we heard.
I did try, but I wasn't much good. But I played a good bit of rugby.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And again, those I know Kilkenny is known as a hurling stronghold, and it's a great place to grow up because everybody there is connected with hurling at some level. But you know, Kilkenny also had a number of decent rugby players. Willie Duggan, the late great Willie Duggan, who was a great friend of mine. And again, people like Willie. So rugby was big in Kilkenny, but always played second fiddle
to the
Yeah.
hurling.
to hurling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you don't hear much
Yeah.
connection. Maybe.
Yeah, so my father ran a business called the New Park Hotel,
Yeah.
which had opened in Kilkenny in 1966.
Yeah.
He went down there with two other lads, and they bought 50 acres of land and 2 old houses, which was about a mile from the city centre, for 17 grand.
Wow.
And they started with 20 bedrooms. Every time they made money, they'd build another 10 bedrooms. And it ended up becoming it's still a very prosperous business today. Our family, we sold it out in 2007, but it was built from the ground up.
Yeah.
And it was one of those businesses that you only reinvested when you had money. And that philosophy of only spending what you have
Organic
has
growth.
kind of
Yeah.
stayed with me all the way through. I was at one stage, I was never terrified of debt, but I was debt adverse. I got that from my father. I know that to this day, because he ran a very successful business, but he was conservative in his approach to finance, but he was brilliant in relation to marketing.
Right.
He'd got his own marketing tricks. He used to do all sorts of weird things, like on Holy Communion Day, he'd walk around when the kids came in, and he'd know kids that were regular and maybe not so regular, and he'd different colour envelopes in his pocket with like a $5 or a $10 or whatever it was, depending on how regular the customer was.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah,
That just were, they don't sound like rocket science, but God, do they work.
That's good.
Wow.
That sounds like something Paddy was telling me about in Nando's, where they put different colour napkins on the table depending on if it's your first.
Well, no, that wasn't Nando's, but I was
Wasn't
telling
it?
you in Nando's.
Oh, you were
That's certain
telling me.
restaurants where they know about customer experience, that they, when they ask you, guys, this is your first time here, and if they say yes, then it's a different napkin put on the table, and that's a sign to the staff, 5-star treatment, lads. I want this customer to come back,
Yeah,
It's a good tactic, really, when you think about it.
Well, anyway, that was my upbringing. Then I went to school in Castleknock College, not a million miles from here, and I was a boarder there.
Right.
All right.
And then I went to what is now TU Dublin, but in my day it was DIT, Cathal Brew Street.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I studied business and catering there. I was there for 4 years. Really loved it. Lived in
Did you have rag trips and Freshers Week and all that stuff?
all that
fun
stuff.
stuff.
And I lived in flats and bed sits up in Rathmines and
They were some of the best times,
and
weren't
all
they?
that, great times. And you know what? It's funny because the lads, a group of lads that I was at school in Castleknock with, we were all from the country. We were all up in Dublin. We all lived together in these terrible accommodation flats in Rathmines and Rathgar.
It gives you perspective.
We're still buddies to this day.
Yeah.
You know,
I can
a
relate
big
to
gang
that.
of us.
Band of brothers.
And I remember one time up, my mother and father called to my flat, our first flat, which was on the north side in Griffith Avenue, and my mother sitting in the car saying she wouldn't go in, and my father had to go in and check out the place.
Horrified.
She wouldn't even go
She's
in.
afraid of what she'd see.
My mum used to come up to my flat and clean the thing.
This is a
she was
special
like,
woman
can't
you
live
had,
in
man.
this. You
Special
can't live
woman.
in this.
No.
Same lady who made the great cake.
Yeah, I can relate to that because
Yeah.
even though I'm from
So-
Dublin, I had bed sits and I lived in all the.
So when I was in DIT again, I came from a place where you always worked.
Yeah.
I had worked in the hotel
What age did you start working in the
Yeah.
hotel?
13 or 14.
What were some of the jobs you do?
I started sorting the bottles. Then I went out to working on the landscaping and the gardens. Then I worked in the bar. I worked in the dining room. And I ended up in the kitchen, which was the place I was most comfortable.
Right.
And when I was in DIT in Calbrew Street, I got a job in the Peppermint Gardens, which was the cool place in town.
Was it a student bar?
No, it was actually a place that was doing, believe it or not, innovative food at the time. Things like tacos, guacamole, stuff fellas didn't even know about. And I worked there part-time for 2 to 3 years when I was in college. And I used to work, like you go out there at 8 o'clock, you'd still be there at 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, come home, and then go into college and try and stay awake. But everybody did that then.
Yeah.
You know, it was everybody had a job somewhere just to keep the funds coming in. And again, I got tremendous experience there, to the point that my interests moved much towards the culinary aspect of the business. And when I finished in Calbrew Street, I worked in AIB Bank Centre. You had to do placement, and AIB Bank Centre was the best catering establishment bar none.
Wow.
In the country at the time. All the chefs were classically trained, from the Russell, from Jammeh's, and we used to feed about 1,500 people every day, but it was top level.
Wow.
Really, really high end.
Where was that, Bobby?
Ballsbridge,
Right.
in Bank Centre in Ballsbridge.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so I really enjoyed that. And again, I was in the kitchen there. And then I was over in Scotland at a rugby match. And as you do at a rugby match, you were in the bar. And in the bar, I was talking to this fella, and he said he was the catering director for ARA Offshore in the North Sea, doing all the catering and the oil rigs. And I said to him, well, I'm the best chef that you've never had. And he said to me, can you start tomorrow? And I said,
many points I just had at this stage.
This is true. This is a true story. He says, can you start tomorrow? And I said, I can.
Wow.
And I rang my old fella and said, I'm after getting a job. I have to go up to Aberdeen tomorrow morning. And I went up to Aberdeen, and I went out on the rig, my first rig, which was the Beryl, which was a sister rig to the Piper Alpha, that one where tragically all the people were killed.
Yeah.
But I went out there for 2 weeks, and I ended up staying out there for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So
How old were you at this stage?
21, 22.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an experience.
Yeah.
So was it like were you living a party lifestyle on the rig?
Well, I lived in, and again, that was the type of work that you did on the rigs. Like, it was a very intense, hard work for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks off. And, you know, a lot of people weren't able to deal with that. There was a lot of alcohol, substance abuse. And there was a kind of a school of life thing about it as well. I lived in Rathmines, and I came home for 2 weeks, and I flew out every 2 weeks and did my work and came back. So I was living in Dublin and working out of Aberdeen in the North Sea.
Would you say all the work that you put in working in the hotel with your dad and family kind of stood to you there in terms of your work ethic? Then?
Yeah, well, I'd never any problem getting dug in and doing whatever work needed to be done. And but I did teach me an awful lot about just this, as I say, the school of life. These were tough characters, you know, hard lads that they certainly didn't have it easy. Yeah. And it was a tough environment. Yeah. And you needed to be relatively tough to survive.
Is it fair to say the catering environment is tough overall in general?
Generally, it's, it can be a very high pressure place. If you think about it, you're judged on what you put in front of you. You're only as good as your last meal. And again, there's a creativity involved in it, which I liked. And it's hot. It can be stressful.
There's no windows.
So I always liked it, and it gave me a kind of a good, like, I like the pace of it, and I like the energy of it, but it's not for everybody. That's for sure.
I remember when I was trying to get some money up to go to school, I did some kitchen portering for 12 months, and I got to see, I was actually offered a commis chef role and I never took it. I just didn't feel it was for me. The pressure was too intense. The head chef, he was German, and he just ran this. It was like this military kind of operation in terms of, you know, all the different chefs, your sous chef getting everything ready for the breakfast, the lunches, the dinners, and the pace at which you guys worked that in there was phenomenal. And I was in the back washing the dishes, and that was tough enough. I wasn't even cooking at it, you know. So I can only imagine what it would be like as a career.
No, I loved it. And again, but I sort of wondered then, you know, even though I was loving it, you know, I said, I got to think about the long term here. What am I going to do? And I ultimately wanted to you know, maybe run my own business. I didn't want to do it straight away.
Yeah.
But I had one eye on that prize, and I was happy to do that whenever that came along. So the company that I was working for on the North Sea, they had a sister business in Canada, and they transferred me over there. So I stayed with the same company, but I got into management over there, and I worked in places like Croke Park type places. I worked in the C&E Stadium in Toronto. I worked in an amusement park for about a year and a half where we did all the catering. A place called Crystal Beach, which was about 11 miles from Niagara Falls.
Lovely. Wow.
And I built up good experience. And because I was single and I was putting in the graft, they used to sort of use me as a kind of a troubleshooter and send me to places that there was issues or problems. And I had a great couple of years over there. I learned an awful lot.
Any other Irish lads there?
Very few.
No.
Yeah, very few.
Stood out.
Yeah. There was a few, and there was one or two when I was living in Toronto that I used to meet now and again. But I always felt that, you know, when I was working in Canada, it was good to integrate yourself into where you are. And I got stuck into the Canadian. All my friends were Canadians.
Yeah.
And most of them were related through work, because work was a big part of my life then.
Yeah.
You worked far more, we used to do 80 and 90 hour weeks, you know, when it was really, really busy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a young man's job.
Yeah, well, it was.
Yeah. And did you find your business acumen came from all the different experiences you had there, or did you find it was kind of in you because of your father being a successful businessman?
I found that I had this kind of, which I was delighted that I did have it. I had a kind of an ambition about me. I didn't really mind what I did, but I wanted to do it right and to try and progress wherever I was. That was the limit of my ambition.
It was just there. It was your nature said this is what
Yeah,
I
and I'm not saying I was, you know, I wasn't anything special or anything, but I just grafted. I was a grafter, and I'm still a grafter.
Before all that in school, how did you manage?
Average.
Right.
I was average at best. It's funny. One of the things, and I often think about it when I only really made sense of things like maths and statistics and law and stuff when I could tangibly relate them to business.
Yes.
And I could never do that in school. And I barely got into DIT, I'd say. I was lucky, but I got in by the skin of my teeth. But once I got into DIT, I never failed an exam. Wow. I somehow found this.
You knew you were on the path then.
Well, I got a connect that I never had in school with the academic bit and the business that I was in. And I don't know why I never got that. Maybe it was me. I don't think it was any fault of the people that were educating me, but
maybe the system though.
I only really made that connection myself when I went to college. And like that, I again, it was about working smart. We used to cram in those days in college. You did all the fun things and all that, and then you'd go at it hell for leather 3 weeks before the exams.
Done all that,
and I hope you come out the other side of it.
And it works.
Yeah, by and large it did.
The nature of the short-term memory. It sure does. Was there any books outside of education then where you would have books that would have influenced your life or influenced your thinking or changed your approach, where you say that's the book that kind of taught me that?
A book that I really, really loved because it was sort of futuristic, and it kind of was The Stand by Stephen King.
Right.
A big, thick book that I read when I was in my early 20s, and I reread it recently, and that had a huge influence on me. And I was never really a mad science fiction guy or anything like that.
Tell us how it kind of what it did to you.
Well, just the fact that it was the end of the world. There was only so many people left, and around society starting off all over again, and the kind of people that needed to behave in particular ways to survive. I was fascinated by all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Who would you say had the greatest influence on you growing up?
I'd say probably my Eulad.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's funny, you know, we would have had a stage, we would have had certainly a stage where we could agree on nothing. And we were head to head. But then when I went off and did my own thing, and I came back from Canada and I worked in Campbell Beauty Group for 13 years. So I was on the catering side of the house down in Cork first, and then I became the managing director of Bewley's, and we'll come back to that in a second. But when I was doing that job, my old fella said to me, "Why don't you come back here and, you know, you can run this business?"
Yeah.
And I said, "You know what? I'm after going my own way now."
Yeah.
He was always of the view that there's no job for you here.
Really?
As in, you make your own way, and eventually, you know, when you've proven that you're able to run the business, then you can come back.
That's
Well,
good parenting.
That's
isn't
good
it?
parenting, yeah.
That was,
yeah, yeah.
and I've had the same.
So many people take the easy road and just
Well,
jump straight in
I've
there.
had
Yeah.
the same philosophy with
took the road less
my own
travelled.
girls.
Yeah.
Again, we can come back to that. But so then he said to me, "Would you at least join the board?" And I joined the board back in the mid-90s, and I worked with him then part-time for
Right.
about 10 years, and we got on great.
Who was biting the tongue? You or him?
Well, he kind of felt that I had something to bring,
Yeah.
and then I kind of realised that his experience was far more than I knew. So collectively, it worked for us both.
You got a whole new appreciation for what he
it
did.
worked for us both. Yeah.
What would you say was the best piece of advice he ever gave you?
Well, he used to say, and again I say it, is that it takes twice as long and it costs twice as much. And how many times have we seen that?
Yeah.
It still happens to me to this day.
That's a great one. I haven't heard that before.
It's true. It's so true, though, isn't it? In everything.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Where was your mum and all of that? Did she work there, or was she
No,
just being mammy?
and again, my mother's an amazing lady. She's still married. She's going to be she's still with us. My father died in 2001, but my mother is she's going to be 89 next month.
Wow.
And she's an amazing woman. She was never involved in the business. I remember her telling me she worked as my father's secretary for a week, and they had a blazing row, and she stormed out and said, "If this marriage is to survive, we're never working together." And they never worked. But she was of great support to him.
Yes.
Really, really. And even though she was never involved in the business, he used to seek her counsel.
Of course.
And she was quietly, behind the scenes, but never in the... And that worked for them. And to the same degree that my own wife, Mary, and I have been together a long, long time. And we've never, ever really worked together. But again, one of the things that, is so influential in success in business is who and how your partner is. And, if you've got somebody who understands that sometimes you do need to do an 80-hour week.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and again, I'm not proud of this, but I put business before everything at one stage for a few years because it needed to be done.
That's what it needed.
It needed to be done. And I recall vividly being late for my second daughter Emily's communion, again because I was fixing a coffee machine.
I heard that story.
Sorry.
Now. I was
Well,
calling
did
you
you?
names.
Well, but
That was a tough decision.
well, it was just, and again, I we laugh about it now, but it wasn't the Mae West at the time. Let's put it that.
Yeah.
And why was there nobody like an engineer or somebody else you could give that job to?
Well, I know it's crisis management. Stuff goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know
That's the
yourself.
reality of it.
It's
Isn't
the
it?
In
reality,
business, stuff goes wrong, and when stuff goes wrong, you just have to sort it out.
Roll up the sleeves and get stuck in.
The bones of that, I think, sometimes is that you're probably the only one who's going to do it as quick and as attentive and as fast and
Well,
do
if
it
it
right.
has to be done,
Yeah.
you just do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I came back from from Canada. I worked, as I say, in Cork for a number of years on the Campbell's catering side of the business, and I got involved in sales and developing the business. And I worked there. My wife Mary worked in Marks and Spencer's. She opened. She was there when Marks and Spencer opened in Merchants Quay. So there was just the two of us. We'd no kids. Our first daughter was born when we were in Cork, and then the same week she was born, we moved to Dublin. So new baby, new job, new house, all in the same week. I'll never forget it. I said, if you talk about stress, that's one way to bring on maximum stress.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I was in the Campbell Bewley Group when I was asked to become the managing director of Bewley's. And, you know, back then in the mid-90s, Bewley's was a very different business. We'd 50-odd shops. You know, there was a Bewley's in most towns in Ireland. We brought Bewley's to the UK, to Edinburgh. And I ran the cafe side of the business, the bakery, and the franchising company. Tough game, tough gig, 90 miles an hour all the time.
Wow.
Do you know, in the mid-90s, I used to clean the grounds of Campbell Bewley's up in Santry.
Oh, did you?
I used to go up there on a Wednesday, the half day from school, and I used to go up there and get £20, and I used to spend 4 hours cleaning the property there. You know, there was a little business park there.
Yeah.
Near Omni.
In Northern Cross.
Yeah. So Santry, you know, it was where Omni is now.
Behind the Comet pub there.
Yeah, up around there. Yeah. I used to go up there.
That was after I was in those offices for about a year.
Right.
But I was mainly based in Graft. Well, my office was in Mary Street and Westmoreland Street, and even in Grafton Street at a stage.
Yeah. No.
Like, it was a great business, and you know, I learned a huge amount there. I really did. But it was work hard, play hard. And when I look around today at the number of people that I worked with back in those days that went on to be very, very successful in various different worlds. It was a hard school of knocks, but if you came through it, the chances of being successful were much higher. And as I say, I loved it. But I then came to a point where I was there, as I say, all up 13 years. I was running out of road, and it was that time then to do something for myself. So I set up my first business when I was 38 years of age, so it was no spring chicken.
That was a good age to be setting up.
Yeah.
And my fourth daughter was just born, 38 years of age. I left Bewley's and I opened my first business, which was called Perk.
Were you saving money at the time to do this?
I had enough money. Well, I'd barely enough. I had a few shares in Bewley's, believe it or not, that I managed to sell in a private company, which was it was the first time anybody ever managed to do that. So no, I hadn't a lot, and I borrowed 50 grand off the Bank of Ireland, as it was then, and Carol Bulger, who was the branch manager in the Bank of Ireland, who's now the chairperson in An Post, she lent me the money, and I opened the first shop in Grafton Street underneath Laura Ashley, and she used to come in and buy her sandwiches every day off me, because she was afraid I was going to go bust. And she reckoned if she bought her sandwich there, that there was less chance of that happening.
Fair play.
And I nearly did go bust.
What did you say to her to convince her to take a punt on you? Because 50 grand was a lot of money, and you had experience, but like, why was this going to work?
I don't know. She reckoned and that was, you're right, it was a lot of money. And you know, again, I was at a point where, you know, the house had to be remortgaged and that kind of thing, and it was, all the bets were on this, and it had to work.
Did you feel the pressure?
Big time.
Bobby, my mammy asked me to ask you a question.
Yeah, go on.
It's very important. What's your favourite song?
My favourite song...
This is a measure of a man.
Yes.
Probably, maybe Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits.
Nice. Yeah, nice choice.
Are you going to play it for me?
No.
It's not like my electric, I would. No problem.
There's footage of you doing air guitar on YouTube.
Is there? I hope there isn't. It's probably my daughter's put that up.
That's a classic
air
guitar song.
I'm a big music fan, always have been.
Yeah.
I still try and go, and COVID really upset this for me, but I try and go and see a gig once a month.
Lifts your spirit.
Again, I love live music particularly. I remember when we were young lads, we used to go and see the Stop Making Sense movie, the Talking Heads movie, in the Ambassador Cinema. It would be on every Saturday night, and we'd go in and see the same movie over and over again. But music, I think, is a big. I love music, and I like when I run. I listen to music.
Yeah.
I listen to music, quietly. I still have a decent stereo that just to put on a nice piece of music. It's great.
It. Yeah, it makes a huge
What would you
difference.
listen to when you're running?
A lot of compilations, but I'd listen to. I like progressive rock, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin,
Tin Lizzy.
I like
Tin
this.
Lizzy, Genesis,
Yeah.
all that late 70s stuff.
Brilliant.
They're all box
particularly.
stickers, yeah. They're brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
That's my genre.
Right.
Yeah.
We could have a whole other
Yeah.
episode on that.
Yeah.
You're in our world there as well, yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
So, moving on then, we were talking about going from being the MD of Bewley's to setting up
Perk. Yeah.
Perk. Right, so that was your first shop, and you had your loan, and it was just starting. So, why when you're the MD, let's say, of Bewley's, and you're on a great salary, why would you take the leap into something as risky when you've got a family, you've got a new house,
Everything's settled, life is good.
and you've no reason to believe this is going to work other than your own, intuition maybe, which is sometimes enough. But from the outside, you're like, it looks like a mad move. Where's your salary going to come from?
Yeah, and I questioned that, particularly in the early days when I was faced with some huge challenges of trying to keep the show on the road. And typically I didn't open one shop. I basically, my vision for the business was that we could get to 20 shops, and I opened 3 shops in very quick succession.
So what you would have pitched that at the start. The plan here is 20 shops.
That was my business plan.
Okay.
Had 20 shops in it.
Right.
But I opened the first 3 shops too quickly. I didn't have enough money. I was undercapitalized, and I sailed a very fine line of being solvent and not solvent.
How did you get through that? What did that look like, Bobby?
It looked like me standing in the shop on Wednesday, not sure I could pay the wages on Wednesday.
Yeah, that's a rough feeling.
Yeah, that's a tough feeling, yeah.
It's do you know what? It was a huge driver for me, because I never wanted to let anybody down.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I got from somewhere. I don't know where, but I do have an abject fear of failure, and it's not a cliche. I genuinely have it.
Yeah.
And it's because I don't want to let people down, and I always felt that way.
Did you have any self-doubt at that stage? Where you
Big time.
And how did you deal with it?
My way of dealing was to try and I threw myself further and further into the business, and I knew everything that happened. I was across every detail. I was able to maybe save money here and there because I was so close to the business. But I ended up with 6 shops, and I had a kind of a eureka moment that said, if I keep running this way, I'll always have 6 shops.
Yeah.
I couldn't run any more shops.
Yeah.
On the way I had no management. It was all me. I had a part-time bookkeeper who used to do the accounts.
Jesus.
And
It's not sustainable.
yeah,
it's
it
not,
wasn't. And I said, I'm going to have to do this differently.
And what timeline? What time frame are we talking about from when you opened the first to the 6th?
About 3 years. Yeah.
That's quite quick.
That is very quick, yeah.
To keep control over them,
The whole lot.
And then I was approached by Insomnia, who were competitors of mine.
Yeah.
Right? And there was another company called Bendini and Shaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Did you know these guys?
I did, and I wouldn't have known. I knew Harry from Bendini and Shaw better than I knew the Insomnia guys, but the Insomnia guys bought Bendini and Shaw, which was a sandwich company, and then they combined purchased me. So I sold my business, my 6 shops, and the deal was that I was to become the commercial director of
your shares were gone
of the combined entity. Yeah,
right.
And so then, after about 2 weeks of me working in this new combined entity, so we'd 17 shops. we decided they were all going to be rebranded Insomnia.
Was there a consultant used for that?
No, there
Just the
was
three of yous
just
having a chat.
Yeah, and they decided that they wanted me to be the managing director. I said I'll be the managing director, and I worked very closely with Harry O'Kelly, who's still the managing director to this day of Insomnia, and John Classy, who was the third wheel, who was the spar guy, and the three of us effectively bought out the original shareholders, and we drove on that collective business. So I wasn't the first to the party, but
It's an interesting
that's how it
sequence of
kind of
events.
morphed.
Yeah.
And we then scaled up the business from those 17 sites.
How big were the other guys when they came and approached you? How Bandini and Shaw? How big was their chain?
It was slight. They were all around the same.
Similar size.
No, slightly bigger maybe,
Slightly bigger.
but not much.
Right.
Yeah. So there were three businesses that were around the same size.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you know what? But it made sense that sometimes if you look at, and it made sense to me that, a third of something that's potentially going to be much bigger is way better than 100% of something that's only ever going to have 5 shops.
So true, yeah.
That was my logic on it anyway, and it worked out.
Wow.
Were you worried about losing control?
I not really. I was, as MD, I was in control.
Right.
I was pretty much driving the business. So, and I was real enough to see the way the market was going.
Yeah.
Like we saw when we had the 17 shops, I knew we could scale it from there. And we had international opposition come in 2006, 2007. Everybody said you guys are going to be wiped out.
Were your 6 shops profitable at the time?
They were.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave you a bit of confidence.
We're not talking that you'd retire on.
But you had a model that works.
Yeah.
So this is scalable. You knew it was scalable. Yeah. That's the
and we made the sandwiches centrally, and we distributed them around. And the other thing we did, which I thought worked for us, we only focused on Dublin. Like you hear fellas who get a successful business going, and then we say, oh, we have to go to Cork, we've got to go to Belfast, we've got to go to London.
That's interesting, isn't it?
That is interesting.
There's as much population here in Dublin.
That's just ambition, my friend.
And in terms of management resources, keeping it tight, it was the best thing we ever did. And we only went out of Dublin when we were ready to go.
Yeah.
And I didn't think too much about it at the time, but it was definitely the right call.
No, definitely, because it's easy to go. Let's go nationwide, or let's branch out of Ireland. But sure, if you haven't exhausted or saturated the market in Dublin, there's no need.
The other thing that we did, which again, it's easy to say it was a good idea now, but is to have different income streams in the business. So we had the high street stores, we had the spar business, which again John Classy brought to the party. But that was a very different business to us operating on the high street. So we had convenience stores.
Yeah.
And the third bit we had was a concession model, which meant we were in places like Eason's, Meadows and Burns, Primark, Pennies.
Who did those negotiations?
Well, I would have done a lot of the early ones, but subsequently Harry did them all. But that was something we did, because if you negotiate with somebody who's much bigger than you, like if you're fortunate enough to trade in somebody who's got a much bigger, deeper pockets than you, like that they really bring you on. And it's a great way to grow the business. And so effectively then we ended up with 3 different income streams coming into the business. And when things got really tough in 2008, 2009, we were right on the edge as well. And it was only that we had those other income streams rather than just the high streets, we would have been wiped out. Yeah. And we came close enough to being wiped out as it was, but we managed to.
Did you have to get additional finance?
We were put into the Bank of Scotland's intensive care unit.
The banks were being ruthless.
Intensive care unit.
Yeah.
I like the way you put that.
You had to ring. I used to have to ring the sales in to the guy in the bank every Friday, and he'd want to know what lodgements were going to be going in at the weekend. Very precarious.
That is hairy.
That's a scary time to be in.
I thought I'd left that behind me,
Yeah.
and then we were back at it again.
Yeah.
And I think most businesses that are successful, people look now and they say, oh, that business is, look at what they've done in 3 years, they've flipped it, and they've done. To me, it takes 20 years. There's no business is going to be really successful unless there's 20 years of highs and lows.
Yeah.
And having those close calls we had along the way, as well as those great days where we opened new shops and we brought in new business. But it's all about, it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without serious hard work. Yeah.
Wow.
So
What was the toughest moment you can remember? Like, when was that time where you were kind of, holy shit, things are getting really bad here?
Well, we were in 2008 when, you know, it was basically when the IMF came to town.
Yeah.
And we were paying high street rents and and we ended up, you know, footfall. People started to maybe not have 3 coffees a day and cut back to 1 or none. But I remember we looked at what we were doing and we changed our business model.
I was going to ask you that.
To reflect the marketplace that was out there. And we came up with all these really, really keen, price sensitive, price driven. We reckoned that if we could compete on price when times were hard, that we might survive. And we managed to restructure the business to bring people across the door, and they spent less, but they still came across the door.
Yeah.
And that was our ticket to survival.
That's what has
in
to
those
happen
times.
in the rough times.
Yeah.
It does come down to price when
and price does matter. Like people,
it does.
People, you know, you forget about price when times are good. When times are bad, price is right there. If you can't compete on price, you're not at the races.
Yeah.
And that's actually how we started, because we started in the recession in 2009, and now we never sell on price, but at the time it was all about price. And because we weren't taking a salary, there was no overhead, we could sell at anything near cost if we wanted.
Yeah,
that's
we're
how
quite aggressive.
That's how we won business, because we had nothing else to pitch. We couldn't. We didn't have any service to talk about, so it was just price. And that's,
It's just trying to win customers.
It's not the best place to be, but it has to happen for a while.
Yeah. And you can once you can get the customers in and have customers, then you can work out the rest.
Yeah.
But if you don't have customers,
you have nothing.
you know where to start.
Did you have a target customer profile built, or was it just
no?
Any
we went where the people were, so it was all footfall driven. So if there's people passing the door, whether they were students, whether they were shoppers, whether they were in business parks,
because it's coffee and it's
they were our
consumable
customers.
that nearly everybody is kind of a potential customer.
They were our customers. So we just followed the footfall.
Okay,
yeah.
So, pet hates in business. If you had one, what would you say it is?
I don't like bullshitters. I don't like people.
There's too many of them.
I don't like people that, you know, aren't straight.
Yeah.
I don't deal with people, and I don't say this in an arrogant way, but I don't deal with people I don't like. And I'm fortunate enough to be at a place, and as I say, I don't want to sound arrogant, but if I don't like somebody, I won't deal with them.
You're selective in who you want to do business with,
And
nice place to be.
I like people who can make a decision. I like decisiveness. I like clarity. I like simplicity. And I don't go in for waffle. They're the kind of things I like, and things I don't like.
Yeah.
We say to our sales reps, one of the target criteria for the target customers, it has to be someone you like.
Yeah.
Because who wants to deal with somebody who's difficult, you know, week in, week out.
And you do have to deal with people you don't like occasionally.
From time to time.
And you know, but if you can get to a point where you don't have to, isn't that all the better?
It sure is.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah, I'm not saying I never dealt with people I didn't like. I did, but
if you're customer facing, it's inevitable.
Yeah. But it was never through choice.
Yeah.
As a business owner, what was the most surprising element of being a business owner did you have? Like, what was when things settled down, when things got successful, what did you?
One of the things that surprised me was when I left Bewley's.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was running a business that was turning over 30 odd million. I was really surprised at how little I knew when I set up my own business. if that makes sense.
It's relatable. Yeah. It's relatable.
That there was accountants and there was marketing lads and there was all sorts of, and then there was just me. And then I really quickly found out the areas that I wasn't good at. And I tried to then, you know, build my team and build my business on making sure I had people who were better at stuff than me.
Yeah.
So that was a big surprise to me.
Did you know your numbers? Were you good at the finances?
But you know, I don't consider myself a fella who's good at analysing debt equity ratios or intense balance sheets, but I understand sales, I understand gross profit, and I understand net profit. And
We've seen you grill people on Dragon's Den.
and I also understand that I could run a business primarily by how much I had in the bank account. Like I'm good on the street sense of nuts and bolts stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't go in for, you know, as I say, the high finance stuff, but I sales, which is the lifeblood of any business, and getting everybody thinking about sales.
Yeah.
And making sure that you make every sale and that every sale counts.
Yes.
Yes. So I don't, as I say, I'm not a financial whiz, but I'm good on the bread and butter stuff.
Yeah.
Could you define getting into some Insomnia at the time, the customer experience? Was there an emphasis on creating a customer experience from when they crossed the door? What did that look like?
The idea we had, and it was, again, comes back to my simple approach, was that if you came into Insomnia, there was only two things that staff needed to be able to do. The first one was to make a really, really exceptional cup of coffee.
Okay.
And the second one was to smile and give good customer service. We made sure that everything else was done for them. The sandwiches came and were delivered. The fridges were stocked before the managers used to arrive into the shops in the morning. And their prime focus was on those two elements.
Well.
And that worked.
Yeah.
It really did work because, you know, the branch managers, I believed in giving them ownership for their own branches, but giving them, again, the support and the tools to run the business, but it was their branch.
Right.
Did you create a loyalty scheme, any type of loyalty?
We did.
program?
We were the first group to automate loyalty.
Oh, very good.
So we were at the party way back, and we automated loyalty. Jesus, it was back in the mid 2000s.
When you say automate, what does that
So
mean?
we used to have the stamp.
Stamp the card.
And the guys used to make, people used to make stamps out of potatoes and stuff, and there was a big fraud around it. So we were the first people to link loyalty with the tills.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, back in...
So I wasn't the first one to do that fraudulently. That was good.
So,
And did you find that increased sales? Did that have an impact?
Well, do you know what it did? It also told us, and this is, again, back to the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
It told us who our customers were and where they. So we were able to, when we automated loyalty,
Yeah.
we could see that a guy was coming to Grafton Street or Bagot Street during the week, and he might be in Malahide or Blackrock at the weekend.
Oh, because you could track.
And we could track also these customers who were spending the most with us. So then all of a sudden you know who your big spending customers are and where they are.
Yeah.
And you can take different promotions then and just target them specifically.
Love it.
That's what we used to do.
Yeah,
Powerful
love it.
data,
yeah.
That's powerful data, yeah.
Yeah.
Data's the new oil.
Again, it was complicated at the time, but it was, the strategy was relatively simple.
Did you personally go to where you got the beans, like Central America or Africa, and see what was happening and how did
Nicaragua.
How did that
Ethiopia.
change your business approach when you got back to go and see that and then come back and say, right lads, there's something we need to keep in mind here?
Yeah, well, I was in Nicaragua, I was in Ethiopia 2 or 3 times, Tanzania, Kenya, lots of mainly African countries. As I say, Nicaragua was a fascinating place.
Yeah.
Do you know what it did? It gave me a connect between what we were doing and the people who were producing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you see horrendous, and I've seen it with my own eyes, horrendous poverty.
Wow.
And the scars of war and just desolation. And these people being paid pretty much nothing for back-breaking work, you know, out in the hot sun, you know, and it gave me, and that's why we were the first company to go 100% fair trade. That
Wow.
was
Well done.
That was out of that, and that was out of direct experience of seeing that fair trade.
So is that an emotional response from you,
Big time.
personally?
What can you do to change and help?
It just meant that those people who were working, that they just got paid a decent wage. It wasn't that they were being, overly rewarded or anything. All they were being paid.
Did that change your margins?
It did. We paid more for it, but we got it back tenfold.
Did you ever get to go back and see any of the benefits of what you're doing?
Yeah, we went and in Ethiopia, we built a health center.
Wow.
We did a water treatment thing. All
amazing.
Not big money, like 10
but
grand.
life changing.
And you could see then the difference that, somebody having to carry, 5 litres of water on their back and walk 3 miles in the hot sun.
Yeah.
Didn't have to do that anymore.
No.
Like that's life changing stuff.
Well done, Bobby.
No, it's just like I never was big on the marketing of it.
Yeah.
Because
it was a personal thing.
I'm slightly cynical about the marketing of it.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
But I for me, it was real and the connect was real.
There's a lot of people marketing stuff like that and not doing much, and then there's others like yourself.
It's all just for marketing,
doing
stuff
for the right reasons and not necessarily
for them.
marketing it.
Yeah, no, and again, my association with fair trade goes right back to those early days.
Wow.
And I still, these kind of things aren't perfect. Sometimes but their intent is good, and if the intent is good, and you can merge that with proper controls and stuff like that, you get a good result.
Yeah.
Wow. Well done. That's phenomenal. Well done.
Can I ask you a question about success, right? So I suppose, what was success, or what is success to you, and when did you feel now we're successful, and how did that change you as a person?
To me, believe it or not, success to me was not going broke. And I say that with sincerity. Once I saw we could do enough to stay trading and to keep the business running, I actually considered that success.
Wow.
And that was the basis for anything else after that.
Did that allow you to reduce, let's say, the 60, 70, 80 hour weeks where you go?
Eventually,
Yeah.
Eventually it did, yeah. So that was my early barometer of success, was actual survival.
Really?
And, then success then was, success is relative, Just because you're successful in one shop doesn't mean you'll be successful in 200. Just because, if your ambition is to run one business, there's nothing wrong with only ever having one shop. If that's what it is. I wanted, as I said, my vision was for 20. We went way beyond that, and I was delighted that was the case.
What did you end up at, with 100 and 180, was it?
Nearly 200.
Right.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
incredible.
anyway, I'm out of all that now.
Would you? Oh, sorry, I was gonna
No, just I was going to say we've massive respect for you for getting
Massive,
from that vision of
to
taking the
successful.
leap, having one shop to get to nearly 200. So
It's phenomenal.
it should inspire other small business owners who maybe have started recently or in the last couple of years and still have the one shop, or maybe
Two shops,
just to remind them that it takes 20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Because it's
Still
easy.
takes
It's easy to compare and wonder, maybe to get demotivated by the success of others in the early days,
Yeah.
and to forget that it does take 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not for the faint-hearted. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Would you encourage your children to get into business, start their own business?
Well, one thing that I decided is, and we kind of decided this as a partnership with Harry, John, and myself, that this was going to be a one generation business.
Oh, really?
That nobody, and I didn't want my kids going into it again. I didn't give them the opportunity to go into it.
Yeah.
Did they ever ask you? Or?
Well, they all worked there, and again, like myself in
Which
the
is
hotel.
great. Yeah.
So one of them worked in Ballsbridge, one of them worked in Dunleary, another one worked in UCD.
Serving the customers.
Making coffee.
Full on the
So
ground,
that
yeah.
was their extent of the involvement in the business.
Yeah.
And I think they all learned a lot from that. But in terms of, coming in on an equity basis, sorry, girls, you're on your own.
Three girls.
4 girls.
Oh, three girls.
yeah,
I know, you feel, my friend.
Yeah.
Any entrepreneurial sort of trades coming through?
Well, one of them is in marketing. The second one then is in photography and art. So they're all different. And then I've two in the world of fashion.
Oh,
so
fantastic,
Very good.
so like
all happy.
I just say to them, get out there and whatever you do, just go and do it
And enjoy it.
and enjoy
Yeah.
it.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
So, no, I see, and I have seen, you know, tremendous pressure put on young lads and girls to go into businesses that really they should never go into.
Yeah.
And it all ending badly and affecting family and, you know, really it just,
There's a lot of pressure to take the mantle.
you know, I don't believe, I think you can look after your kids in different ways.
Of course.
And I was never that precious that it had to be a family thing that, and even if I go back to the family business that was in our family for 50 years, you know, we let it go.
Yeah.
And good luck to the next lads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some people have a difficulty with that, but that was never me.
Huge emotional attachment
Yeah,
to these businesses,
yeah.
you know. On that then, was it hard to let go of the Perk brand for you? Because you built it up, that's your baby.
A little bit. But you know what? I saw the reality that, you know, if it was rolled into Insomnia was a better name and brand, and that we just used the locations, and that 17 was better than 5. So and that turned out to be the case.
Brilliant.
The quick fire round.
Right, quick fire round for you, Bobby. We're going to move on from Insomnia, right?
Great.
We don't want to keep you here too long.
No.
Dragon's Den, how did it come about initially?
A friend of my wife's was working in the marketing department of Bank of Ireland, who were sponsoring it, and he said to me, would I be interested? I said no. He said it to me again, would I? And then I thought, you know what, this could be good for my brand.
Yeah.
And I went in there as Mr. Insomnia. No one knew who the hell Insomnia was.
Yeah.
After Dragon's Den, everybody in Ireland knew who
Boom.
Insomnia
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
So regardless of what it cost me personally, and it did cost me
Did it?
a few
Did it?
quid.
Oh, well,
yeah.
I have to invest.
But do you know what? The sum of the parts that it gave me, 4 years, I was there for the first 4 years. I enjoyed it, number one. It was my own money that I'd earned, that I didn't borrow for, I won't say I could afford to lose, but it wasn't going to pauper me if I lost
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I invested in people that I liked. Now, not all of the businesses worked out. I didn't fall out with one of the 9 investments that I made, and that again was important to me.
Did any of them pay off?
Say again?
Did any of them pay off?
I got my money back on a few,
Okay.
and I made small money on 2,
Okay.
and I lost money on most of them.
All right, so you wouldn't
But
do
you
it
know
again.
what? Again, I look at the time that it was, what it did for my business,
Yeah.
what it brought me to. It brought me into the world of broadcasting.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still on radio 12 years later.
How did Newstalk start then from
Yeah.
that
It started
down to
on.
business?
It started I again out of Dragon's Den.
Right.
So
Who come up with the concept?
it was there again. It preceded me.
Yeah.
It was a show that was on Newstalk, and it was on a Sunday morning at 9 to 10. And I started. There was 25,000 listeners. And I remember after the first show that I did on the October weekend in 2010, the MD at the Times, I said to him, that wasn't great, was it? And he says, it doesn't matter. There was no one really listening anyway. So basically, we took it from there. We built it up. It became a 2-hour show. We moved it from Sunday to Saturday. And we now have circa 120,000 listeners. And
Fantastic, well done. Great
it's
achievement,
business it's business for the working man, let's
Yeah,
call it.
yeah.
It's we don't do debt equity ratios, we don't do stocks and shares.
Yeah.
It's about the man in the van, the plumber who employs 6 people, the guys like yourselves, you know, that we try and keep it real, we try and keep it grounded.
Yeah.
And
It's a great show.
you know, people like it. So
What were one of the most memorable conversations you had? Was it Trump or was it?
Trump was good. What was great about Trump was he says, Bobby, you've got a great show. That's a great business show that you run there. And I got that clip and I play it every now and again and said, well, if Trump thinks
Priceless.
we're good,
Yeah.
we got to be half decent.
Brilliant.
But
I love
I've
it.
interviewed Michael O'Leary,
Yeah.
Enda Kenny, the whole, and again, for me now.
You wouldn't tell them about this podcast, would you? And get them.
Right. But for me now, the fact that I'm not very much involved in frontline business anymore,
Yeah.
that show gives me my business fix. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm talking to all the players,
Yeah.
all the people who are doing things, who are innovating,
Yeah.
and that stimulates me.
Brilliant.
So I get as much out of it as anybody listening, hopefully. So
Great.
Right.
hopefully,
Fantastic.
two-way streets always work.
Yeah.
You got very sick 2015, was it?
Yeah.
Was
Head
it
and neck cancer.
head and neck cancer, right?
Yeah, which
So
is
that's-
effectively throat cancer.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Still CEO at the time.
I was, but you know what? I was chair of Insomnia at that time,
Okay.
but I was still very involved in the business. But I was very sick. I went away, and I remember the lads in Insomnia looked after everything, and they were more or less. I was able to go away and get better, and
Yeah.
I remember coming on the show in Newstalk, and not really wanting to talk about it publicly, but the only way that I was able to get better was to tell people that I was sick.
I remember that.
And I did that, and I said, I'm going away for 6 to 8 weeks, and I went away, and I was in Luke's hospital, and I had chemotherapy, radiation therapy, small bit of surgery, and I had a whole kind of epiphany around, why am I here? What do I want? Am I going to come out the other side of this?
Was there a chance you weren't?
Pretty much. I was 55 years of age, and I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a fighter, and I gave it my all.
Yeah.
And I got back to business and work, and I just gradually built myself up, but I was very sick for a while.
Yeah.
What did you do differently after that? How did it change you, I suppose?
Change your lifestyle.
Well, I the main difference that between then and now is I no longer sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, you get perspective on things, yeah.
I'm only interested primarily in my health, my family, and my friends.
Yeah.
They're the three most important things to me. And other stuff is important, but I live my life on those three things. Holding them very, very high.
Yeah.
And I exercise a lot. I run, I cycle, I sail. I've always sailed competitively.
Did you exercise before you got sick?
I did,
Yeah.
but
Right.
not maybe not as smartly or not as intelligently as I do now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I still am not great on the diet. I'll be hands up. I still eat the bad stuff now and again, but I do. I've built exercise into my life as
habit.
something that just happens.
Yeah.
And I get a lot out of exercise. So I was sick, but I'm better. I went to my ENT guy recently in the eye and ear, and he said to me, Bobby, I never want to see you again. And if
brilliant.
I ever see you again, it'll be for something else.
Music theatre.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm
Fantastic. Well done.
And I came out the other side of that, and you know what? It's all about the people around you.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It
so,
is.
So that was a low point, but a low point among much more higher points
Of course.
across my life.
Did you smoke before?
Smoked in the early days.
Yeah.
Smoked a lot. When you could smoke 20 or 30 fags a day.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
I was very much that guy, and I was never able to smoke casually. I was able to. It was either all in or all out.
Do you think there's a strong link between your personal fitness and your business fitness?
Big
when you're-
time.
As a small business
Hugely.
owner, and is it under?
I think
under,
I think you need to be resilient in business, and to be resilient, you need to be fit.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to put in the long day, to put in the all-nighter if you have to, and to do all that, you need to be fit.
And mentally sound as
And
well.
the mental bit is just when you're doing that run, that release of, and just that clarity of mind, that thinking
Yeah.
space that you have, that's the mental bit that definitely works.
Amazing things happen on the
Yeah.
run. Yeah.
I come back with every problem solved when
Yeah.
I go for a run.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
So I'm a big advocate of exercise,
Yeah.
and not that it has to be running marathons. Find your own thing.
Yeah.
Even if it's going for a walk, but find something that just gives a little bit of exertion.
Yeah.
And you really will get the benefits of it.
Bobby, would you have a message for any small business owners out there at the minute who need some encouragement? There's a lot of guys out there who'd be struggling or looking for some motivation or feeling that they can't move it to the next level.
Well, again, I don't want to be overly simplistic here, because every business is different and every business has its own unique challenges. But, stay with it, and, if you can, try and do business with people that are bigger and stronger than you.
Yeah.
And they will bring you along.
Yeah, of course.
If you're in a position to get a customer that can actually, and I really do think business works two ways.
Yeah.
People will help you. If you ask for help, people will
Big
help you.
believer in that, yeah.
Don't be
Big
afraid to
believer.
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've often done it, yeah.
Yeah. But as I say, it isn't easy, and it doesn't happen by itself.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of blood, sweat, and toil in there, and you guys know that. But
Yeah.
that's just the
it
way
sure
it is.
Sure is.
Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there for today.
We will, yeah.
Thanks, Paddy,
We will.
No, well then, on behalf of us and all the crew here at the Business Fitness Podcast, which is us,
Yep.
thanks, Bobby. Thanks for coming in.